Thick, black smoke rises from the brick chimney stacks. It pours into the gray London sky. The massive furnaces consume coal without any interruption. A layer of soot rests on the stone windowsill. The dark particles remain undisturbed by the wind. The accumulation represents years of silent industrial growth. Men in wool coats walk through the dim streets. The morning sun is unable to pierce the haze. They move toward their shifts with their heads turned down. A brass air pressure gauge remains fixed in position. The needle points to a zone of high stability. No alarms signal a shift in the local weather patterns. Empty coal sacks lean against a damp brick wall. The fuel has already been fed into the private hearths. A city waits for the heat to disperse the cold. Coal barges sit low in the dark river water. The current moves slowly around the heavy steel hulls. Supplies continue to arrive at the riverside power stations. A row of identical desks fills the large office. Typewriters sit idle under the dim fluorescent lighting. The bureaucracy does not record the changing air quality. Official ledgers are stacked high on a wooden shelf. The ink on the pages has long since dried. The records focus only on production and economic output data. A thermal inversion layer settles over the rooftops. The warm air acts as a heavy lid. Toxic fumes are pressed back down toward the streets. Street lamps flicker on in the middle of day. The light struggles to reach the wet pavement below. Visibility drops until the city appears to dissolve. A parked black car is covered in grime. The headlights are obscured by a film of sulfur. No one comes to wipe the windshield clean today. Inside a hospital ward, the beds are full. Patients lie still under thin white cotton sheets. The staff works in a state of quiet confusion. Oxygen tanks stand in the corner of the room. The steel cylinders are cold to the touch. Demand for clean air begins to exceed the supply. A newspaper lies discarded on a wooden bench. The headlines discuss coal exports and industrial targets. There is no mention of the worsening air. Mechanical gears in a factory continue to turn. Lubricants are black, with the intake of grit. The machines are designed to operate in these conditions. A bus driver stops in the middle of the road. He cannot see the edge of the curb anymore. Passengers sit in silence as the engine idles loudly. A white handkerchief is pressed to a mouth. When it is pulled away, a black stain remains. The body is filtering the air that the city produces. Abandoned market stalls line the empty square. Vegetables are covered in a fine gray powder. The commerce of the city has finally stalled. The Public Records Office remains open, late. Clerks continue to file papers by candlelight. They document the routine operations of a dying system. A massive iron valve is turned slowly. More steam is released into the cooling towers. The demand for electricity requires more coal consumption. A telephone handset dangles from its cord. The line has gone dead in the booth. Information no longer flows across the darkened city. Horses stand shivering in their wooden stables. Their coats are matted with the falling sulfur. The animals understand the danger before the men do. The river tide pulls at the bridge pilings. Dead fish float in the oily surface scum. The pollution has saturated every level of the environment. A clock on the wall has stopped. The pendulum is frozen in its wooden casing. Time seems to have lost its meaning in the smog. A stack of death certificates sits on a desk. The ink is fresh on the most recent entries. The cause of death is listed as natural causes. Smoke continues to leak from the basement vents. The city is breathing its own industrial waste. The cycle of production has become a closed loop. Empty chairs sit in the legislative chamber. The debates regarding air regulation have been postponed. The leaders have retreated to their country estates. A child looks out of a bedroom window. The glass is too dirty to see the street. She draws a small circle in the heavy soot. The fog begins to seep under the doorways. It enters the private spaces of the wealthy. Nowhere is left untouched by the industrial output. Documentation of these systems continues for the record. Observation remains the only tool against systemic denial. The camera captures what the official ledgers omit. A man sits on a park bench. He has stopped trying to walk to his home. He waits for a wind that does not come. The city morgue has reached its capacity. New arrivals are placed in the cold hallways. The scale of the failure is physically manifest. A flashlight beam cuts through the darkness. The light reveals the density of the air. Millions of tiny particles dance in the artificial glow. A government report sits on a mahogany table. The cover is bound in red leather. The recommendations for change are listed as non-essential. The iron gates of the cemetery are closed. The stone monuments are turning black with age. The earth is receiving the victims of the air. A furnace door is thrown open. The orange glow illuminates the worker's face. He shovels more coal into the white-hot center. A teacup sits on a kitchen table. A thin film of ash has formed on the surface. The domestic sanctuary has been compromised by the street. The ledger books are finally closed. The total consumption of the month is calculated. The numbers do not reflect the human cost. The wind finally begins to shift. The heavy air starts to move toward the sea. The outlines of the buildings reappear in the light. Rain begins to wash the soot away. The black water flows into the gutters. The city is being scrubbed of its immediate evidence. The brickwork is left with permanent stains. The history of the smoke is etched in stone. The survivors returned to their normal routine. A clean white shirt hangs on a line. The air is temporarily clear of the dark ash. The infrastructure of the city remains unchanged. New barges arrive at the power station docks. The cycle of delivery and combustion restarts immediately. The lessons of the week are filed away. The first wisps of smoke begin to rise again. They emerge from the same brick chimney stacks. The system continues because nothing has forced a stop. The city remains under a canopy of industry. The light of the sun is filtered once more. The quiet accumulation of the future has resumed.